Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are plunging into a really important question. What is the real value of getting an MBA?
Mm.
We're trying to push past the usual quick calculation of just, salary bumps and tuition costs
Right.
to look at the full picture.
Exactly. And we've pulled together a set of sources for this deep dive. Everything from academic research looking at how graduates perceive the ROI, especially the non-financial bits,
Okay.
to a look at MBA programs specifically for consulting careers, and even an analysis of business analytics graduate programs.
So our mission today is really to cut through the noise, pull out the most important insights from all this material,
Yeah.
and give you a well-rounded view of what an MBA truly involves and its full impact, both, on your wallet and, well, on your life.
Okay, let's unpack this. So when most people hear MBA ROI, return on investment, the conversation immediately goes to money, right?
Totally. You think about those online calculators projecting potential salary increases against the tuition cost, the
Right.
straightforward stuff.
The classic, purely financial view. But the sources we're digging into today really emphasize that a holistic evaluation, like a complete picture of the value, it really must include variables that are over and above just the financials.
And that's where this Wits Business School study fits in.
Precisely. It was an exploratory study looking specifically at the perceptions of MBA graduates, what they felt were the non-financial costs and benefits.
Okay.
Now, they're careful to say, these findings aren't necessarily generalizable to every MBA program everywhere,
Sure.
but it gives us a fantastic starting point for understanding the kinds of non-financial things people experience.
So what did they find about the perceived costs? I mean, beyond the sticker shock of tuition.
Well, there are absolutely more than just the price tag. The WIT study, yeah, it details the financial side, tuition fees, of course, then the big one, financial opportunity cost.
Right. The wages you lose out on while you're studying, that can be huge.
Huge, especially if you leave a well-paying job.
Yeah.
Then add international travel for some programs, textbooks, maybe losing company benefits if you quit, and just miscellaneous stuff, stationery, supplies, all that.
Okay, so that's the money side. But you said the non-financials were maybe even more significant.
That's where it gets really interesting. The non-financial costs were often perceived as having the highest importance.
Importance, more than the money.
In terms of perceived impact, yes. The WIT study found the highest perceived importance went to the loss of balance with other areas of life.
Wow. Okay, explain that.
Think about it, almost 90% of the respondents in that study felt their work-life balance or maybe life-study balance took a significant hit.
Nearly 9 out of 10 people. That's
Yeah.
massive. What else was high on that list? Stress?
High stress levels definitely up there. And critically, the deterioration of relationships with friends and family. They actually termed it the relationship costs.
Relationship cost.
Yeah. They also mentioned reduced contact with professional networks, a non-financial opportunity cost, like missing promotions or projects at work while you're studying.
Right.
And even, interestingly, a loss of self-confidence during the demanding program.
Loss of confidence. I thought an MBA was supposed to boost confidence.
Well, hold that thought, because confidence also shows up big time on the benefit side. But yes, some felt it dip during the intensity.
That relationship cost finding, though, did they say more about that? It sounds pretty serious.
They had a very specific and quite sobering finding. If a close relationship deteriorated during the MBA, graduates were unlikely to regain it after graduating.
Wow. Okay, that really puts the holistic aspect into perspective. You could gain a lot professionally, but potentially lose something really important personally.
Exactly. It's a cost that doesn't show up on any financial spreadsheet.
So if those are the costs, financial and these significant non-financial ones, what about the flip side? The benefits. What did graduates perceive as the return on that whole complex investment?
Okay, turning to the benefits. The WIT study showed perceived financial gains, like increased salary reported by 68% of their respondents.
Which lines up with other studies, right? Like the TEM journal source.
Yes, the TIM Journal source also pointed to higher wages post-MBA, so that's pretty consistent. But here's a key insight from WITS. The benefit mentioned with the highest frequency,
Yeah.
at nearly 76%, was an improved network of business contacts.
Huh. So more people felt they gained a valuable network than reported a direct salary increase.
That's what the frequency suggests, yes.
Uh.
Even if the salary increase was highly valued by those who got it, the network was mentioned by more people.
Interesting. What other financial or sort of near financial benefits came up?
About 40% reported getting a promotion.
Yeah.
A similar number, around 40%, secured new employment altogether.
Okay.
Other things mentioned were improved job mobility, being able to leverage a new career pathway, some increase in other earnings or company benefits, but those had lower frequency or perceived significance in the WITS study.
Got it. And the non-financial benefits, you mentioned confidence comes back here.
Yes, and this is where the widest range of positive impacts really showed up in the WITS study. The non-financial side was huge.
Like what?
The top three accounted for over half the total weight respondents gave to non-financial benefits. Number one, increased confidence,
Ah, here it is.
perceived as the most important non-financial benefit, reported by over 90%. Then, a broader worldview, insight, or wisdom, also over 90% frequency. And significantly greater knowledge, again, over 90%.
Those sound like really fundamental personal and intellectual shifts, more than just learning business framework.
Exactly. They also perceive significant gains in things like greater skills, increased productivity, higher job satisfaction, a better quality of life, more control over their own destiny, even a greater sense of values and ethics.
You mentioned the relationship cost earlier. Was there a corresponding relationship benefit? Like, did things get better afterwards for some?
There was a category for improved relationship with friends, family, and new close relationship, but these received the lowest allocation among all the perceived non-financial benefits.
So it seems the program can strain relationships, but it doesn't necessarily fix or significantly improve them afterwards for most people.
That appears to be the perception in this study, yes.
Yeah.
Not to the same degree as other benefits like confidence or knowledge gain. Anyway,
Okay, so putting it all together, the money, the time, the stress, the relationships, the knowledge, the confidence, the network. How did the graduates in the WITS study feel overall? Was it worth it?
the overwhelming perception, the bottom line from the WIT study, was incredibly positive. 98.1% of their sample perceived that the overall benefits significantly outweighed the overall costs.
98%. Wow. That's a pretty powerful endorsement considering all those non-financial costs we just talked about.
It really speaks to the holistic value, doesn't it? Based on how the graduates themselves experienced it, it's clearly more than just an ROI calculation.
Definitely paints a much richer picture. Now, beyond just these perceived costs and benefits, the sources also talked about how the MBA program helps develop specific essential management skills, right? Competencies.
Exactly. The WITS study, for example, used a framework called Anto Crue's critical cross-field outcomes. You could think of these as key skills needed for success in almost any professional environment.
Like critical thinking, communication.
Precisely. And they found graduates perceived that their abilities in these areas significantly improved during the MBA program.
Which competencies saw the biggest jump?
The top two, perceived as improved by over 98% of respondents, were solving problems using critical and creative thinking,
Okay, crucial.
and collecting, analyzing, organizing, and critically evaluating information. Again, fundamental for any manager or leader.
Absolutely. What about softer skills like teamwork and communication?
Also highly rated. Working effectively with others was reported as improved by around 93%, and communicating effectively by about 91%.
And seeing the bigger picture, systems thinking.
Yep. The ability to see the world as interrelated systems, understanding how different parts of a business or a problem connect, that improved for around 85%. Organizing and managing oneself improved for about 74%.
Any areas that didn't improve as much?
Interestingly, the least perceived improvement was in using technology effectively. That was only around 35%.
Huh. Maybe that reflects the specific program focus, or maybe it's an area MBA programs could bolster.
Could be. But it definitely connects back to that idea we touched on earlier that pure technical competence isn't the whole story. These studies highlight that human characteristics, applied competence, meaning the ability to actually use your knowledge and skills effectively in real situations, working with people, that's what's really crucial for performance in a business environment.
Right, and the MBA journey isn't just about building those skills in a vacuum. It often acts as a major catalyst for tangible career changes, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It's often about advancement and new opportunities. The Tim Journal study had some great data on this.
What did they find about people changing jobs after the MBA?
In their sample, a majority, 58.5%, changed jobs within 1 to 3 years after graduating.
Wow, more than half moving on relatively quickly. What about changing careers entirely, like moving into a whole new field?
A significant chunk did that too, 34.1%. So about a third in that same study changed careers within 1 to 5 years post-MBA.
That's really interesting, especially since you mentioned earlier that most people start the MBA looking for growth in their current field.
Exactly. It suggests the MBA opened up possibilities or gave them the confidence or skills to make a bigger pivot than maybe they initially planned.
Makes sense. What about people who stayed with their current company? Did the MBA help them move up?
It seems so. For those who stayed, 75% agreed they saw increased responsibility. 70% reported portfolio expansion, meaning their scope of work grew.
Uh-huh.
And over 60% thought that expansion would likely come with an improved job title. So clear signs of internal advancement.
And we already touched on salary increases, but the TEM study confirmed that too.
Yes, strongly. 50% agreed they received a significant salary increase. And for those who gave specifics, the most common range was a pretty substantial bump, 25 to 49%.
That definitely supports the idea of higher wages post-MBA, which we see across different studies.
For sure. It validates that financial return aspect.
But the TEM study also looked beyond just salary, didn't it? At the overall standard of living.
Right. They asked about that specifically. And 68.7%, so over two-thirds of graduates in their sample, experienced an improvement in their standard of living after graduation.
That's a broader measure than just income. What factors did the graduates say contributed to that improved standard of living? What made the difference?
Well, the factors they cited most frequently really echo some themes we've already discussed. The number one factor mentioned was the application-based learning experience.
Ah, the practical side again.
Exactly. The practical exposure they gained during the program linking theory to real-life problems. Personal achievement, motivation, and drive were also seen as crucial. Can't discount individual effort. And then, the networks and relationships built during the MBA. And finally, of course, the academic qualification itself.
So it's a combination of the program's practical approach, personal drive, the network, and the credential.
Seems to be the perceived mix, yes.
Yeah.
It reinforces how important that hands-on, relevant learning is, like the WIT study also suggested.
Okay, let's zoom in a bit. Consulting is a hugely popular post-MBA career path. The Menlo coaching source talked about this, right?
Yes, consulting is a major draw. And you can see why it demands this unique blend of technical skills like analysis, but also really strong social adeptness, communication, creativity.
A bit of everything.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And an MBA is seen as providing the necessary education, honing those diverse skills, and maybe most importantly, building that critical network to break into the top consulting firms.
And it sounds like the MBA can be a key entry point, even if you haven't done consulting before.
That's a key point from the source. A significant portion of new hires at the top firms, McKinsey, Bain, BCG, the MBB group coming from MBA programs, didn't have prior experience with those specific firms.
But the MBA acts as that pivot point, that entry ticket.
Very much so. It provides the credibility and the access.
What specific MBA skills did the source highlight as being vital for consulting success?
Well, the curriculum typically develops key areas like data analysis, obviously, but also management communication, leading organizational change, strategy formulation, corporate finance, operations, marketing, HR management.
The core business functions?
Exactly.
Yeah.
All foundational for the kind of problems consultants tackle. And the source also emphasized the importance of things during the MBA, like internships with consulting firms.
Getting that direct experience.
Right, and actively participating in consulting clubs on campus. Those are crucial for gaining practical insights and, again, networking within the industry before you even graduate.
Makes sense. Did the Menlo source mention specific schools known for strong consulting placement?
It did. It highlighted schools like INSEAD, which is noted as a global leader, a top recruiter for Bain globally, and often liked for its shorter one-year program.
Okay.
In the U.S., University of Chicago Booth was mentioned as strong in MBA placement with a powerful alumni network. Northwestern Kellogg, known for teamwork and collaboration, places very well at BCG.
Any others?
Yeah, the list also included Harvard, Stanford GSB, MIT Sloan, London Business School, and Columbia. All top-tier programs with strong pipelines into consulting.
Okay, so that's consulting. What about another field that's obviously huge now, business analytics? The ISCAP source looked at graduate programs in this area, right? Which might include MBA concentrations or specialized master's degrees.
Absolutely. The demand for managers and analysts who are truly data savvy is just exploding. You see it in projections from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, the World Economic Forum. Everyone needs people who understand data.
So what are the key skills needed there, according to the sources?
The ISCAP source, drawing on industry needs, listed things like SQL for database querying, strong Excel skills, Critical thinking is always key.
Uh-huh.
Programming languages like R or Python are becoming standard.
Uh-huh.
Data visualization tools like Tableau, good presentation skills to communicate findings, and understanding machine learning concepts. And the ISCAP study actually analyzed a bunch of different business analytics graduate programs to see what they were covering. They found quite a bit of variability,
Variability, like they weren't all teaching the same core things.
in some extent, which led them to propose a kind of competency framework and a model curriculum to maybe help standardize things a bit.
Interesting. So what did their analysis show that programs are typically teaching?
They used a standard model, the ACAN-ACE model, to categorize competencies. They found that the data area managing, storing, preparing data was covered by basically all programs they looked at, 100%.
Okay, that's fundamental.
Integration, connecting data and systems, was covered by 89%. And foundations, the underlying math, stats, modeling concepts, by 73%. So the core seems pretty well covered.
Right. But where were the potential gaps then?
The coverage dropped off a bit for development, things like building analytical systems. That was about 66%. And then significantly lower coverage for organizational domain.
What does that include?
Things like understanding the business context, strategy, ethics, project management, digital innovation, that was only covered in about 30% of the programs.
Only 30%. That seems low given how important context is.
It does, and technology specifically focusing on emerging tech like AI, machine learning applications, cloud platforms, process automation, that was even lower, around 22%.
Wow. So core data skills are there, but maybe less focus on the strategic business application, the cutting-edge tech side in some programs.
That's what the ISCAP findings suggest, yes. A potential gap, especially considering where the job market is heading.
What about specific courses and tools? What did they find was common?
Common required courses included things like capstone projects applying skills to a real problem that was in 83% of programs. Various analytics techniques courses, 73%. Database management, 73%. Core business analytics or data science courses, 67%. Data mining machine learning, 66%. And statistical analysis, 31%.
And the tools, Python and R.
Top of the list. Python was mentioned in 78% of program descriptions, R in 76%, then SQL at 46%, Tableau at 30%, SAS and Excel both around 22%. So the key takeaway from that ISCAP study really is, while programs generally do a good job with the foundational data handling and analysis skills,
Yeah.
there might be a shortage of coverage, or at least explicit focus, on the skills needed for these rapidly advancing technologies like AI and automation, and also in those crucial organizational domain areas, ethics, strategy, aligning analytics with business goals.
Which are exactly the skills needed for the future.
Precisely. Skills needed to ensure analytics actually delivers business value and adapts to industry's evolving needs.
And how does this loop back to the broader MBA value discussion?
Well, it reinforces that graduate programs, including MBAs that offer concentrations in analytics or data science, are definitely playing a role in equipping managers with these needed skills.
Okay.
But it also serves as a reminder, maybe a warning, that curricula have to stay incredibly relevant and fast-moving. They need to keep pace with industry demand, especially as almost every role becomes more data-driven and technology evolves so quickly.
That makes a lot of sense. So let's try and pull all these threads together now. We've talked about perceived costs, perceived benefits, both financial and non-financial. The skills developed, the career impacts, the needs of specific fields like consulting and analytics. Based on everything we've unpacked from these sources, what recommendations emerge? How can someone considering or doing an MBA really maximize that experience?
Several key themes definitely came through consistently across the sources. Firstly, echoing Mintzberg, who the WITS study mentioned, different learning methods add value. It's not just lectures.
Right.
And the TIMS study really hammered home the importance of application-based learning and practical exposure. Getting your hands dirty, basically.
Exactly. Things like industry visits, bringing in guest lecturers who are actual practitioners, using real-world case studies, internships, and faculty explicitly linking the theory to real-life scenarios. That practical connection seems absolutely vital for the learning to stick and for graduates to actually realize the benefits, like that improved standard of living reported in the TIMS study.
The WITS study also had some pretty direct advice for students themselves, didn't it?
It did. Some very practical recommendations. First, just commit to finishing. It's a tough slog. See it through.
Okay.
Second, plan realistically for all the costs, especially those big non-financial ones we talked about at the time, the energy drain, the impact on relationships. Acknowledge them up front.
And related to that, proactively negotiate support from your key relationships, friends, family, partners before you start. Talk about the demands, set expectations. That can help mitigate those relationship imbalance costs. Then, during the program, actively participate. Don't just sit there. Engage in prep, discussions, assignments. Collaborate with faculty. Collaborate with your peers. That network is key, remember.
Right. And what about after you graduate? The work isn't done then.
Definitely not. The WIT study emphasized this. Take personal responsibility for implementing your learning back in the workplace.
Okay.
And actively self-monitor your performance. They pointed out that competence gained in the MBA leads to improved performance at work, and that improved performance is what ultimately unlocks the benefits like promotions and salary hikes.
So the degree is a catalyst, a tool, but you have to actively wield it.
Precisely. You had to put it to work to get the full return.
What about recommendations aimed at the schools, the institutions, the faculty?
The sources had thoughts there too. A big one was viewing students as key stakeholders, being empathetic to the significant costs, financial and non-financial, they're incurring, and understanding the benefits they're seeking.
So more student-centric.
In a way, yes. Actively support students in experiencing that full, holistic range of benefits, not just the academic part. Use those effective application-based learning methods. Encourage deep participation. Also, recognize the importance of and actively build appreciation for those core competencies like the SAQA CCFOs, the critical thinking, communication, problem-solving skills.
And keep the curriculum fresh.
Absolutely critical. Ensure it's constantly relevant, up-to-date, application-oriented, and truly reflects current business realities and, importantly, future industry needs.
The TEM study also threw in the idea of integrating entrepreneurship support, right? Like incubation.
Yes, acknowledging that starting a business is a path many MBA grads explore. So providing resources for that could add significant value.
And the IS Cape study's point about plugging those gaps.
Right. A clear call for programs, whether specialized masters or MBA concentrations, to address those identified gaps in covering emerging technologies and those crucial organizational domain competencies, ethics, strategy, digital innovation. Prepare people for what's coming.
Okay, so wrapping this all up, what's the big takeaway from this deep dive? If someone asks, what's an MBA really worth? What's the nuanced answer?
I think the clearest takeaway is that the value is fundamentally multifaceted. It's just far, far more than a simple financial calculation of tuition versus salary bump.
It's holistic, like we said at the start.
Exactly. It represents a holistic investment that often leads to significant personal and professional transformation. It's about deep skill development across a really wide range of competencies. And it demonstrably opens doors to enhanced career opportunities, whether that's climbing the ladder, switching jobs, or pivoting into entirely new industries like consulting.
And despite the very real costs, both financial and those tough non-financial ones, the studies we looked at show that overwhelmingly, graduates feel the total package of benefits outweighs those costs. That 98% figure from WITS is hard to ignore.
It is. The degree acts as this powerful catalyst, providing a foundation, opening doors. But, and this is crucial, the full realization of all those benefits. That requires continued personal effort.
You have to apply the learning.
Apply the learning back in the real world and proactively leverage the skills and the network you gained. It's really a journey of transformation, not just about getting a credential.
Okay, so here's a final thought for you, our listeners, to chew on, building on all this. Given those significant non-financial costs and benefits, we discussed the impact on well-being, relationships, confidence, and coupling that with the rapidly evolving skill demands we see in fields like business analytics and AI. How might the ideal MBA experience need to continue to adapt and evolve? How can it best maximize both the personal well-being and the future career resilience of its graduates in the years ahead?